on board. Again, one of the final systems we have to have in place.
Go ahead on the big loop.
Yeah, Roger, I wanted to give you an idea of what we're doing right here. So we have a primary plan where Pluto is currently working right now to try to get an alternate means to get you video using VLC. We are working on that right now. If that does not solve this issue here, our backup plan is that SpaceX has a ground pass coming by at 12:23, where they will be picking up video. So the alternate plan will be once we hit there, we're going to try to pipe in the video directly to you through that SpaceX ground site. That's what we're looking at right now. We currently are at about 2 hours left that we can stay at waypoint 2 at this point. How copy?
Okay, copy. VLC plan Alpha is the primary plan. We see that SOC-8 being worked, and then if that doesn't work, the backup plan is to try to get video piped in once we have a SpaceX ground coverage at 12:23, and copy about 2 hours of consumables to hold at current position.
Good copy. Thanks, Raja.
And we just heard a recap of our current situation from the Capcom here in Houston, Scott Zagidi. So again,
raised our visors, so check us on the way in if when we get cleared in.
Houston station on 2 for crew constraint.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground. I have to apologize, I didn't get your
just checking in if the crew no exercise constraint bands that is currently about to expire, if that will be extended based on the current delay.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground. Can you repeat your last? I'm going to mute my other channels and listen only to you.
You know, Jake, I don't have the ability to do that, so I'd like to wait for this conversation to end on the big loop, and then I'll repeat it.
so a quick recap of our current situation. Crew Dragon Endeavour still holding at waypoint 2, just about 20 minutes away from its intended docking port on the International Space Station. We've got about 2 hours, a little less now, of consumables, essentially propellant, where we can continue to hold here at waypoint 2 while we troubleshoot an issue getting video over to the crew monitoring on board the space station. So that's one of the checks we have to have in place for their ability to monitor final approach. So the Pluto flight controller here in Houston is going through a number of steps right now, trying to get them video through an alternate path through a video program on board.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground, ready to copy.
Jake, what I was saying is, in anticipation of some kind of a protracted delay here, we have raised our visors, so be sure to double check with us if and when we get cleared to go back in.
Dragon, copy all. Visors raised and absolutely understand. We'll be in touch with any sort of forward plan. I'm sure you're copying on the big loop that troubleshooting is occurring on the ISS side. We've got a lot of chatter on the ground about what to do here. Thank you for your patience. Understand visors are up, and I'll be in touch with more shortly.
Good Good work, Jake. Thank you.
And the AX-1 crew taking their visors up, their suits not pressurized, as they continue to hold just 20 meters away from station. So again, we'll continue to hold here at waypoint 2. The team's here on the ground troubleshooting issues, trying to find now an alternate path to get that centerline camera video to Rajachari and the crew on station, who have to monitor during that final approach. If their current troubleshooting doesn't work, we've got a ground pass coming up in about 25 minutes from now, where Dragon will be passing over a SpaceX supported ground site, which also has the capability to get that centerline video down, and then we'll have another option to try and route that over to the space station crew. So troubleshooting continued. We're going to wait until we get this centerline camera video up and running before we continue with the docking. But for now, we're just stepping through the troubleshooting. So with that, why don't we jump over and check in with Andy and Tricia, as again, we're just standing by here for this issue to get resolved. So Andy?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Trish and I are also, standing by, and hopefully we hear good news from all of the folks here back on Earth trying to troubleshoot the video issue. As you had mentioned, it's been otherwise a very, very smooth ride uphill, and this is really the first hiccup that we've seen. So again, we have a couple of options that we are looking into, but for now, Dragon is just parked about 20 meters away at waypoint 2, waiting for a path forward. So Dragon has been on its journey to the International Space Station for about 20 hours now. And so after Dragon had separated from Falcon 9, it began what we call the activation and rendezvous phase of the mission. During this phase, Dragon was configured for on-orbit operations. This phase begins after Dragon separates from Falcon 9 and ends with the completion of the final co-elliptic burn.
The initial orbit that the Dragon was in was about 190 kilometers by 210 kilometers. Those values represented the perigee and the apogee of the orbit respectively, or in other words, the lowest and the highest point over Earth. That means that the orbit wasn't a perfect circle, but more like a slight ellipse.
Yeah, and over the next couple of hours, Dragon executed a series of burns which gradually raised its orbit to align more closely with the station. On screen right now is a graphic. So there are 4 major burns, or firing of the Draco thrusters on Dragon, that brought the spacecraft closer and closer to the ISS. The first was a boost burn. This is based on orbital data, and this raises Dragon's orbit until its orbit reaches an altitude of just 10 kilometers lower than the space station.
It was followed soon after by a close co-elliptic burn that placed Dragon on an orbit roughly co-elliptic with the space station, which means that the crew was about 10 kilometers lower than the station during the entire orbit around the Earth.
The third maneuver is the transfer burn, where we're raising Dragon's apogee, or the highest point of its orbit, to just 2.5 kilometers below the station. And then we rounded everything out with a final co-elliptic burn to once again maintain a constant orbit beneath the station, this time just 2.5 kilometers below it.
That's where we picked up to get into the approach initiation phase and the final stages of Dragon's rendezvous with the space station. This was also when integrated operations between the Dragon control team located here in Hawthorne and the space station flight controllers in Mission Control Houston started. The teams transitioned to integrated operations about 45 minutes right before approach initiation.
Yeah, that's really where we began our broadcast just over 2 hours ago. During the approach, SpaceX flight controllers worked in tandem with NASA teams in Houston to activate and test out a number of systems on Dragon, including the bidirectional communications that Dan mentioned earlier with the station using the C2V2 system, which stands for Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles. This also sets up data stream from Dragon to the station, giving another path for Dragon telemetry to come to ground and giving an additional command capability to astronauts aboard the station. We'll also maneuver Dragon to the proper attitude or orientation and initialize the navigation sensors used for the methodical approach to the station.
And a little bit of time ago, the Draco thrusters on Dragon fired for the approach initiation burn when the Dragon was about 2.5 kilometers below the station and just about 7 kilometers behind it. That swung Dragon up until it was about 400 meters directly below the station. And that maneuver also moved Dragon inside one of the 2 safety zones that Dan mentioned earlier around the station that required a set of go or no-go poles with the different control teams.
Yeah, the first zone is called the approach ellipsoid. It's essentially an imaginary shape measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, essentially a large 3-dimensional oval around the International Space Station. Before Dragon is given permission to move inside this ellipsoid, referred to the teams as the AE, it's configured to be what is known as a 24-hour safe trajectory. And what this means is that if Dragon were to somehow lose control of all of its thrusters, it would be at least 24 hours before its orbital path would take it inside of the approach ellipsoid.
So once Dragon arrived at 400 meters below the station, that was where it was the waypoint 0, which was the first checkpoint during Dragon's approach. The vehicle could hold at 400 meters, but in this instance continued on as all systems checked out to approach to waypoint 1 and through it.
Yeah, at this point, the teams passed through waypoint 1 and continued on to waypoint 2. This is where we're currently at, so we're inside that keep out sphere, which is, again, sort of another imaginary sphere around the International Space Station, this time 200 meters in radius. And at waypoint 2, we are currently holding to troubleshoot some video issues of a Dragon. So we have feed of Dragon looking at the docking adapter of the International Space Station. The folks here on ground can also see that video, but there is a disconnect between the video feed to the International Space Station. So there are a couple of paths that we are continuing to look at, and hopefully we can update from the team soon and we can proceed with docking.
So at the heart of the patch is the venerable ISS itself, which is the core of this pioneering private research mission, reflects AX-1's role as a precursor for future activity in low Earth orbit and a key step towards the ISS's commercial successor, Axiom Station. The flags of the 4 countries adorn the ISS in the middle there in the form of its solar arrays. It represents the multinational crew and reinforces the importance of international collaboration and exploration. And in the background, a cascading plane of blue represents Earth's atmosphere and the journey humanity has traveled to arrive in this new era, among the first steps in expanding the human presence in low Earth orbit. The 4 bright stars you see kind of at the top there, one for each crew member, and an atom at the center of that constellation represents the expedition's scientific and aspirational goals. The very top, the last name of each crew member, Commander Michael Lopez Alegria of the USA and Spain, Pilot Larry Connor of the USA, Mission Specialist Mark Pathy of Canada, and Mission Specialist Eitan Stiba of Israel adorn the top of the design. The bottom highlights the Earth overflown, while the mission's historic significance is spelled out in the first private crew to the ISS. The golden border around the edge of the patch is inspired by the logo of Rakia, the mission's name in Stiba's home country, which marks the significance of this mission to the people of Israel, as it's really their return to flight in honor of their first Israeli astronaut, Ilan Ramon. So, Andy, it's certainly a patch filled with a lot of significance and a lot of meaning to the crew.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite patches. I especially love the atom symbol in the middle, representing all this cool science that the team is going to do. Earlier in the launch webcast, we saw inside the capsule there are the patches of Demo 2 and Crew 2, which this capsule has flown before, and so I'm hoping that this patch will also join the other 2 patches inside the capsule of the Dragon.
Absolutely. And if you're hearing some noise in the background of our broadcast, it's worth mentioning that we are in a rocket factory here at SpaceX Hawthorne. So there's still a lot of activity going on, even early in the morning on Saturday.
Yeah, things really don't stop around here at SpaceX. So it is just after 5 a.m. on a Saturday, but production is starting to pick up again. And that's really just par for the course here for us at SpaceX.
Absolutely. I mean, it's certainly going to be a busy time for SpaceX with, the launches that are upcoming in the next couple weeks. So talking a little bit more on the members of the AX-1 crew. So our mission commander is Michael Lopez Alegria, who is a decorated former NASA astronaut. He was born in Madrid, Spain, and has also called Mission Viejo, California, as well as Boston, Massachusetts, home. He is a U.S. Navy captain and has flown 3 times aboard the Space Shuttle and once aboard Soyuz, so he's certainly no stranger to low Earth orbit life. And he has conducted 10 spacewalks in his career, which means, extravehicular activity outside of the ISS, and that's accumulated into 67 hours and 40 minutes in the vacuum of space, both of which are NASA records. And in 2021, he was inducted into the Astronaut Hall of Fame.
And sitting next to MLA is the pilot for AX-1, Larry Connor from Dayton, Ohio. Larry is an entrepreneur and a nonprofit activist investor. He has won aerobatic flying competitions and summited both Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Rainier. Through AX-1, he will become the first private pilot to reach the International Space Station. He will also become the first human to reach both the deepest ocean depths and enter the bounds of outer space within 1 year. Larry has been actively involved with the Mayo Clinic and the Cleveland Clinic for many years, helping to understand the effects of aging, and this mission will add a new dimension to several of these studies.
Can I just say, the deepest depths of space and then all the way to low Earth orbit? I mean, that is wild. I can't even imagine that. And then our Mission Specialist 1, Eitan Stiba, is now the second Israeli ever to fly to space. Eitan served for more than 4 decades as a fighter pilot in the Israeli Air Force, where he received the Distinguished Aviator Medal. And today, he is an impact investor and philanthropist. I mentioned earlier what a special mission this is for Eitan and the country of Israel. He's working under the banner of the Rakia mission, which has the maxim, "There is no dream beyond reach." During his time on the ISS, he'll facilitate several scientific experiments, educational outreach, as well as artistic activities.
And rounding out our crew, Mark Pathy is an entrepreneur, investor, and philanthropist, as well as the mission specialist 2 on this AX-1 mission. Pathy is currently the chief executive officer and chairman of Montreal-based Maverick, a privately owned investment and financing company he founded that focuses on innovation and social impact. As a strong believer in the importance of philanthropy. Pathy is a member of the boards and executive committees of the Montreal Children's Hospital Foundation, Don LaRue, and the Pathy Family Foundation. Through the AX-1 mission, Pathy has become Canada's second private astronaut and the 12th Canadian to go into space. So yeah, that was our 4 crew members, and again, they are inside of our Dragon capsule Endeavour, just parked about 20 meters away from the International Space Station, again, waiting on some video troubleshooting that the teams here on the ground are currently working through. If you are just joining us, this is a live mission for the AX-1 mission, and the crew was moments away from docking with the International Space Station until we ran into a little bit of a hiccup. But again, we have some primary and backup plans that we're working through to hopefully get that video feed to the International Space Station and resume docking operations.
And we've, throughout this whole process, we've really heard mission control here at SpaceX, as well as mission control over in Houston, really in lockstep with each other in integrated operations. It really highlights how much of a collaborative effort things like this are. There's a saying in the industry that space is hard, and rightfully so. It's very complex to put a human into space safely. The safety of the crew, both in the Dragon capsule and also on the ISS, is paramount, and it's always the #1 focus. So everyone, you really want to make sure that each step that you take, you're confirmed that everything is good to go.
Yeah, and that's why, as part of the procedures, we have these holds built into the operations and to verify all of the checks. In this particular moment, confirming that video feed on the International Space Station side is part of the flight operation. So again, the team is going through and doing their due diligence to make sure that everything is set up and safe for the Dragon capsule to go ahead and dock with the International Space Station.
Absolutely. And in preparation for, troubleshooting moments like this, or, just generally life aboard the ISS, or, going through launches like this, the crew members also have to go through several hours of training. I mean, they went through 700 to 1,000 hours of training starting in August of 2021. So, it was a lot of investment of time and resources that they've put into preparing for this mission. I mean, they really went above and beyond.
Yeah, the International Space Station and the Dragon capsule have just passed over Peru. Again, continuing to circle the Earth. We are in an orbital daytime, but again, we are still holding at waypoint 0 or waypoint 2, about 20 meters away from the docking adapter.
So, Andy, there's no doubt that the incredible efforts of thousands of folks across NASA over the last 2 decades have set the stage for, what is possible in low Earth orbit. The AX-1 mission is a critical step towards opening these possibilities to a host of new participants, governments, diverse researchers, manufacturers, and more people. Here on Earth, we're already seeing benefits from research currently conducted on the ISS, from water and air purification systems to testing medical devices as well as therapeutics.
In addition to tech demos and medical research, access to low Earth orbit allows for a connection to the arts and other outreach opportunities. AX-1 is the first of several proposed missions in advance of Axiom Station, the world's first commercial space station. A sustainable commercial low Earth orbit economy means that expanded access to work in space is available. It also frees up NASA and its partners to put their budget towards other exploration programs while granting space agencies around the world more opportunities through commercial efforts.
Absolutely. And over its lifetime, the ISS has accomplished An unprecedented feat. It's continuously sustained operations on and off the Earth for more than 20 years, which is not only a true testament to the technology required to physically achieve that, but also to the collaborative and cooperative efforts of thousands of people across the world to ensure that multiple nations, agencies, and entities, both public and private, work together to push humanity forward. And as we move forward, private industries like Axiom Space need time to learn how to establish and maintain those relationships effectively. So by flying our private astronaut missions like AX-1 to the ISS, Axiom is taking essential steps to get that on-the-job training as we work towards building the world's first commercial space station. Axiom Station is an opportunity to continue the story of the ISS, science and research through cooperation and collaboration on a global scale for the benefit of all. So, AX-1 is really the next chapter.
Yeah. For now, as we continue to wait for updates of the video troubleshooting issue, we are going to check in with Dan over at JSC in Houston.
Hey, thanks, Andy and Tricia. And so just current status, we're still hanging out at waypoint 2, just 20 meters away. We are coming up on our next troubleshooting steps, though. So the issue we ran into a little bit earlier is getting what's known as the centerline camera. So that's that camera view directly right down the middle of essentially the docking hatch of Dragon, pointing at the docking port on station. And one of our flight rules requires that video to be visible on board the space station for the crew monitoring Dragon during its final approach after we proceed in from waypoint 2. So the teams have gone through a couple of steps to try and troubleshoot that to get the video up to the crew. We have coming up in just a couple of minutes a ground pass. So a couple of things are going to happen over the next few minutes. First, we're going to get our KU coverage back with the space station in about a minute and a half. So we'll get views back from the space station. We'll also get that high rate data link where we can essentially also send video signals up to the station crew. And about 7:23 Central, so in about 2 minutes, Dragon's going to be doing a pass over a SpaceX ground site, which offers another path to get video from Dragon down to the ground. So the teams are going to take that video, ingest it, bring it over here to Mission Control Houston, send it back up to the station crew through another route to hopefully get it into their
Station
support
Houston
computer
on the big
for them
loop
to
for
do
status.
that monitoring.
Go ahead on the big loop.
Yeah, Roger, wanted to give you a heads up on our plan here. Any moment now, we are expecting KU to come back at this point. We're going to route some camera views so that we can see Dragon better from the ground here. At 12:23, so about 1 minute from now, we are expecting to get a video feed from SpaceX that will just come to NCC Houston over here. That's going to last about 5 minutes. Our plan is we are going to check the alignment, make sure that Dragon is in good position. As long as those checks work, we are going to press ahead with the docking attempt. How copy so far?
Okay, copy. About 12:23, you guys will get video to MCC for about 5 minutes. You guys are going to check the alignment on the ground, and if you're happy, you'll land and press ahead.
And that's a good copy, Raja, and we will let you know when we're pressing in. Stand by.
Dragon,
Scott's
on Dragon to ground.
giving the
I'm sure you
update.
copied all on the big loop. Stand by. We're zipping up a plan here, and I'll let you know before we command resume.
And so again, right now we're standing by for Dragon to make that pass over a SpaceX ground site. The plan, we've now got some additional cameras trained on Dragon, just giving the teams additional alignment insight into the capsule as it still hangs out 20 meters away from the docking port. We're just beginning a pass over station ground sites now, and teams are going to work to get that video up to the crew. This ground site pass will last for about 5 minutes. and that means the video will likely not be available for the entirety of that final approach. However,
Dragon,
the way the
SpaceX
flight
on the
rules
big
are
loop,
written,
confirm crew readiness for final approach.
SpaceX Endeavor, copy all. We're ready. Visors down.
and again, as long as the teams
Dragon,
have this
SpaceX
data now,
on the
and
big
we're
loop,
able to
resume
confirm good
imminent.
alignment,
Dragon is entering approach 2.
and Dragon's flight computer getting into approach 2 prep. So we've gotten that video. We've been able to confirm alignment here on the ground. The NASA flight director and the SpaceX mission director have conferred and confirmed Dragon is in good alignment. We have additional tools available, giving us degrees off
For your
axis,
awareness,
just
I'll
real-time
do the crew
telemetry
calls
of
at
Dragon
10,
during its
5,
approach.
2, and 1, and we'll be hands off at 2 meters.
Good copy, Dragon.
All right, so Dragon is now accelerating in for docking. So again, we were able to get that ground pass video. Teams here in Houston, visiting vehicle officer, other support personnel confirmed Dragon was in good alignment. And that video from the ground site, that's the one you were just seeing on the left. So Dragon's now continuing in towards docking. We've departed waypoint 2. We're only 17.5 meters away. We confirmed good alignment, and we've got additional views now trained on Dragon, giving additional situational awareness, and we're continuing to get those updates from the navigational equipment on board Dragon. The LiDAR's giving real-time range rate. We're getting real-time degrees, and that's also being fed to the crew in real time. They don't have that video, but they do have all that additional data that's able to give them enough data to make decisions for board if they need to. So we have proceeded. We are go for docking. Dragon's flying in. It's moving at less than 1/10 of a meter per second. We're just about 15 meters away now from the docking port on the space-facing side of Node 2. Should be just under 3 minutes away from docking. And you can see the soft capture ring on the docking mechanisms extended. It's got 3 of those slightly triangular looking shapes, and those are the pedals that are going to be used to guide it in to the passive docking mechanism on the station side. After that makes the initial attachment, that docking ring is going to retract, bring it in, and then it's going to be able to make a hard mate, engaging 12 hooks to give the hard mate, the hard dock, to the space station.
SpaceX copies 10 meters.
So 10 meters again. Once we get to about 6 meters, you're going to hear the crew call out chop. That's the crew hands-off point. That's just giving direction to the crew on board Dragon not to make any manual control decisions or movements, as everything gets handled by the flight computer from that point in. 8 meters away. Continuing to get confirmation that Dragon is in the correct attitude in the approach corridor, not tracking any issues, just past 7 meters from the docking port. Six meters in closing. The International Docking Adapter number 3 in view
SpaceX
on the lower
copies
right there.
5 meters.
Under 5 meters to go. Still seeing good alignment. Under 3 meters. Soft docking ring on Dragon on top there. International Docking Adapter on the
SpaceX
right.
copies 2 meters.
2 meters. We heard chop call, the crew hands off point.
1 meter.
One meter to go.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, contact and soft capture complete, attenuation in progress.
SpaceX Endeavor, copy all, good.
All right, so with that contact and capture coming at 7:29 a.m. Central Time, 5:29 a.m. Eastern, that's 12:29 UTC, while the station and Dragon flew 258 statute miles over the central Atlantic Ocean. So with that initial contact made, the soft capture ring is now going to begin to retract. After
Dragon,
that is
SpaceX
completed,
on the big
we'll
loop,
be able to
soft
start
capture
engaging
ring
hooks.
retraction in progress.
Soft capture ring in progress.
So we're now going to see Dragon inch a little bit closer to that docking adapter until it essentially performs a sealed connection. And then we'll be able to engage 12 hooks that form the hard capture function on board Dragon. 6 of those are actually engaged during the launch and on the way into orbit. They hold the nose cone, which you can see opened off to the right there. They hold that in place, and then they're opened up once we're on orbit to deploy the nose cone. But 12 of those are now going to engage after the soft capture ring has retracted. Once those 12 are engaged, we'll have a hard mate. Then we can start to connect 2 umbilicals that are going to provide hardline data and power to Dragon through station systems. And then we'll be able to get the docking complete call. And then it's on to some of the post-docking operations. So for the crew inside Dragon, they'll be getting out of their suits, doing some basic cabin configuration as they get ready to open the hatch on their side. That'll be the last hatch to open. Meanwhile, on the station side, Tom Marshburn and the Expedition 67 crew will start outfitting what's called the A-Pass hatch. That's the hatch on the station side. It's got a small valve that Marshburn's going to open up to begin to flow atmosphere to the space between the Dragon and the station hatches. Right now, it's still exposed to vacuum, but as soon as we're able to pull Dragon in and engage those hooks, that will become a sealed space, and so we'll be able to pressurize it, essentially just flowing atmosphere from the station into that previously vacuum space between the 2 hatches. We'll stop a couple of times on the way up in the pressure just to do leak checks and let thermals equalize to make sure that we're actually measuring pressure and how much atmosphere is in there, not just thermal fluctuations. And so once we get that up to pretty much the same ambient pressure as the space station, we'll open the A-Pass hatch first, and then it'll be over to the Dragon crew to open the hatch into Crew Dragon Endeavor. So still waiting for that soft capture ring to retract. This might be a bit of deja vu for Dragon Commander Mike L.A., as this is actually the 2nd time in his spaceflight career that he's docked to the space station on a spacecraft named Endeavor. He flew on Shuttle Endeavor back on STS-113, flying to the station in November of 2002 to deliver the Expedition 6 crew. So thank you to our resident spaceflight encyclopedia for that tidbit. So for now, the soft capture ring's still retracting, and once that's completed, we'll be able to begin connecting those hooks. Those are going to hold it in place. We'll get those umbilicals, and then we'll be able to start stepping into hatch operations.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, ring retraction complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
SpaceX Endeavor, copy all.
and that soft capture ring has retracted. As you heard, we're going to now stand by for a moment for MCS reconfigure. That's the motion control system on board station. For the docking ops, we had handed over to the thrusters on the Russian segment for propulsive attitude control. Now that the soft capture is completed, we're going to hand back over to the gyroscopes, the large gyroscopes on the U.S. segment that are just run electronically to provide non-propulsive attitude control to the station. And then once that handover is complete, we'll start engaging those 12 hooks, holding Dragon in place, and then getting closer to that docking complete call. But if you're just joining the docking, that initial contact and capture did take place just about 5 minutes ago at 7:29 a.m. Central, 5:29 a.m. Pacific, 12:29 GMT, as both the station and Dragon were flying 258 statute miles over the Atlantic, connecting the spacecraft to the station, carrying the first all-private astronaut mission to
Station
the orbiting
Houston,
lab.
MCS is configured. Proceeding with hook driving.
Station copies.
And we now have the motion control system on the station reconfigured back in attitude control being done by the U.S. gyroscopes, and they're now going to start engaging those 12 hooks on the Dragon capsule. All right, we've got confirmation that the hooks have started to drive, and so there's 12 total. We're going to do them in 2 groups of 6. So the first set of 6 driving now. In this split screen view, you've got the newly arrived Dragon Endeavour on the left. On the right there is NASA astronaut and current Expedition 67 Commander Tom Marshburn. He's on the timeline to take the lead in the vestibule pressurization operation, so he's going to be moving into the pressurized mating adapter in the space-facing side of Node 2 and working on the station side hatch, opening up a valve to start to flow atmosphere from station into that soon-to-be sealed pressurized area between the 2 hatches. And again, we expect hatch opening to take place roughly 2 hours. Should be a little bit less than 2 hours following a docking. So with that docking happening right around 7:30 Central, it'll probably be sometime in the 9 o'clock hour before we get the hatches open. For the crew on board, they're going to remain in their seats throughout this as we continue to drive the hooks. And then once those hooks are driven and docking is complete, we will be able to have them get out of the suits. That'll be one of the first items for them. They'll also begin to just reconfigure the cabin. And we just got confirmation 6 of those hooks are engaged, so the first set is good. And then the second set is now driving. And again, first set of hooks are in place. Second set of 6 hooks are now driving. And once we get those in place and get the umbilicals deployed, we'll have docking complete. And then the crew will be able to get out of their suits on board of Dragon. They'll start to reconfigure the cabin. One of the first things that they'll do once we get hatches open is to remove what's called a LiO canister. It's lithium hydroxide. That's the system used on board of Dragon to scrub CO2 from the air. They just remove it and put a seal over it, as they've got a couple of essentially cartridges that get used while Dragon's in free flight, and as they're going to be integrating Dragon's atmosphere with the rest of station, they'll take that out, and then they'll be able to rely on the station atmospheric revitalization systems, scrubbing CO2, providing oxygen for the duration of their docked visit. Once they get on board, and I'll address this a few times, we usually get asked, where's everybody going to sleep? As we now have 11 people on board the space station. For the AX-1 crew, they're going to be split up in a couple of different areas. One will sleep inside of Crew Dragon Endeavour. One will set up a temporary sleep location in the Quest airlock. And then we'll have 2 spots inside of the European Columbus module. One in the newly fabricated Casa. It's essentially a new crew quarters set up there. The roughly closet-sized private booths
SpaceX
that we have on board
loop,
the station, with
complete.
4 over in Node 2.
SpaceX Endeavour hard capture complete.
And there's the call. Hard capture is complete. So all 12 hooks engaged and in place. Next up are some umbilicals, but Dragon now firmly attached to the space station. We see the visors come up on the crew inside, and we can start now stepping into some of the operations to get those hatches open and get these AX-1 astronauts on board the station. So with that, I'm going to send it over to the team in Hawthorne. Andy, Tricia, congratulations on docking the first private astronaut mission to station. Why don't you take us a little bit for the rest of the way?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Right back at you. That was amazing. And so we did dock about an hour later than scheduled, but I always like to think of it as a silver lining. We were able to get an orbital daytime during the dock, so absolutely gorgeous views of Dragon's approach and contact with the International Space Station. And as Dan had mentioned, and we heard over the nets, hard capture is complete. We are waiting for umbilicals to be plugged in and installed, but Dragon is now firmly secured to the International Space Station, so docking procedures can continue, and eventually the crew will make their way out of Dragon and onto the International Space Station.
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, it's just incredibly exciting to watch that. I mean, watching the whole process of Dragon approaching the docking adapter and then, you know, completing that dock was just, I mean, personally for me, I was very, very excited. So I can only imagine what the crew is feeling like right now. This is, you know, like setting off the rest of the 8 days that they're going to have on orbit. So just an incredibly exciting time and very special for everyone involved.
Yeah, and absolutely an incredible effort from the teams to troubleshoot that issue and get things going. That is really what the joint operations and space is about. You had mentioned it earlier. Space is not easy, but you know it takes a lot of very dedicated, talented, smart, hardworking folks to make sure these things are done safely. So, yeah, with the crew now one step closer to getting on board the International Space Station and starting all of the cool science that you know I'm sure they're excited to do.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, docking sequence complete. I hope you enjoyed the extra half orbit in Dragon, or at least found it memorable. Crew Dragon Endeavour and MLA, welcome back. Aton, Larry, Mark, welcome to the International Space Station.
SpaceX Endeavour, we copy all. We're happy to be here, even though we're a bit late, and looking forward to the next chapter. Thanks for all the great work.
On behalf of SpaceX, it's been a pleasure working with you. At this time, ground will be enabling power and comm connections. You are go to doff suits per procedure 4.012. We'll bring the cameras external shortly.
Thanks Jake, we're moving to 4.012.
An Endeavour from MCCH. Welcome to the International Space Station. We are looking forward to this historic mission.
MCCH Endeavour, thanks for all the great work. We're looking forward to moving into the ISS with the other crews.
We're looking forward to it, Endeavour. Welcome aboard.
So some final exchanges as the crew on board Capsule Endeavour begin to doff or take off their spacesuits. In the past, they've actually just left.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground. No response required. Cameras are external.
In the past, I think what we've seen is the suits are just kind of left in the seats, strapped in, and they're stored in the Dragon. But it is quite a funny scene to see the astronauts kind of floating around, gathering their belongings, and there's like these 4 mannequins sitting in the seats. But they're getting ready. There are a couple more operations that needs to happen before we can open both of the hatches. So as Dan was mentioning, the A-Pass hatch on the International Space Station side will open first. Prior to that, we're going to fill the vestibule, which is the space between the 2 hatches. We're going to fill that with air and pressure to make sure that it is equalized on both sides. Then we'll open the A-Pass hatch. Then the Dragon hatch will open, and then the crews can meet.
Station Houston for Tom on the big loop.
Go ahead, Houston, on the big loop.
Yes, sir. Better late than never, but we can now give you a go to get into ingress part 1, and specifically you have a go through 1.1 and 2.2.
Copy 1.1 and 2.1. I have a go for the part 1 of the hatch opening.
Copy that. Also, you have a go in 2.2 when you get there.
Copy and a go in 2.2.
So again, beginning the initial steps for hatch open on both sides. With that, it's been, outside of the small hiccup with video, smooth ride up to the International Space Station.
Absolutely. The crew has certainly been on a long journey, starting bright and early yesterday, April 8th, for, when they arrived to launch pad 39A, leading all the way up to launch at 8:17 a.m. Eastern and 11:17 a.m. Pacific on April 8th. And now, just having completed the docking sequence, and now they're beginning hatch operations. It's just very exciting to see the whole journey that they've been through.
Yeah, the crew has been in space and in Dragon for almost a day, actually. We're coming up on 23 or 24 hours inside the capsule. On board, they were able to eat a couple of meals. They had a sleep and rest period. We did an onboard live event earlier this morning. So I'm sure the crew is super excited to take off those spacesuits and head their way into the International Space Station. And this here is a great view of Dragon. It is docked at the Zenith port.
SpaceX Endeavour on Dragon ground. Cabin mic check.
Dragon, SpaceX on the cabin mic. We have you 5x5. Glad to hear you loud and clear again.
Lots of exciting things happening. With that,
Yeah, same here. Do you want me to do another big loop?
At this point, I'm expecting it's a suit issue. That's not gospel, but I think we're good. Oh, I understand. Yeah, mic comm check on the big loop would be good. Cabin mic on the big loop.
SpaceX Endeavor on the big loop. Cabin mic check.
Endeavor SpaceX on the big loop. Cabin mic check 5x5.
Copy all. Thanks, Jake.
So we are going through some checks. This is a view of Dragon docked at the zenith or space-facing port. The hatch is actually pointing down towards Earth, and the crew is inside, again, doffing their spacesuits or taking off their spacesuits, getting ready to enter the International Space Station here shortly. For now, we're going to send it back over to Dan at Johnson Space Center in Houston.
Hey, thanks, Andy. Yeah, we are now docked and ready to get into hatch ops. So pretty soon we're going to start flowing air through a small valve in the station's A-pass hatch. It's just the hatch on the station side into what's known as the vestibule. That's just that small space that before docking is just exposed to vacuum. But now with Dragon firmly attached, we've got a tight seal and we're going to start pressurizing that section. So we're going to do it in a couple of steps. Station Commander Tom Marshburn is going to be primed for this. And first thing is he's right now in Node 2 in the Harmony module, and here's a live view. First, he's working to open up what's known as the PMA hatch, so the hatch into the pressurized mating adapter. This is closed during the docking operations. And with that, Tom Marshburn has that PMA hatch open. So you can see now inside the pressurized mating adapter, we do use it for storage as space is limited on board the station, so number of items stored, but you can see the cover to the A-pass hatch now in view. So Marshburn is going to go there. He's going to open a small valve. It's going to start flowing atmosphere from the station into the vestibule, and we're going to slowly pressurize that. We're going to use sensors on the Dragon hatch to measure temperature and pressure inside of the vestibule as that happens.
So station on the big loop, no two overhead hatches.
And so right now he's going to...
Copy. Hatch open. Thanks, Tom.
And so Marshburn just radioing down the overhead hatch, so the hatch into the pressurized mating adapter is opened. He's grabbed a tablet with his procedures on, and he's going to now start stepping through the vestibule pressurization. So he's going to open a small equalization valve, and that's going to start flowing air from station into that vestibule. We're going to give it some time for those hatch seals inside to relax, as we're going to be introducing a pretty substantial thermal change for them. So again, as we're measuring pressure inside, we want to ensure that that's not just the air heating up, but we're getting an accurate reading of how much atmosphere is now in that vestibule. And we're going to continue this pressurization until you essentially equalize the pressure between the vestibule and the station and Dragon. They're all going to be at a very similar pressure. We can wait for pressures to equalize, so we can just kind of pause and wait, but at this point the vestibule pressurization has started. It sounds like we're getting that valve open, and so we're going to start stepping through. So this all told will take about 10 minutes to start the pressurization. And then after that, we're going to do a leak check. That can go anywhere from 15 minutes. A quick view of Rajachari, who's doing our primary Dragon monitoring there. But after we get the vestibule pressurized, we'll go into a leak check where they just, again, they wait for thermal conditions to stabilize. They're able to do a leak check and then ensure that the vestibule is pressure tight.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground, no response required. ISS crew are stepping into vestibule pressurization imminently. You are free to follow along with telemetry in 4.400 section 4 if you'd like.
Houston station on the big loop. A-pass equalization valve is open for 75 seconds, now closed at GMT 12:55.
1255, copy. We will take care of the leak check from the ground and give you a heads up here in just a little bit.
Copy.
Module just about 30 minutes ago, docking at 7:29 a.m. Central, 5:29 a.m. Pacific, while the station and Dragon were flying just 258 statute miles over the Atlantic Ocean. We did hang out at waypoint 2 just about 20 minutes away while we were troubleshooting. A video issue getting it over to the station crew for monitoring, but we were able to effect a workaround. Teams on the ground confirming that Dragon was in the proper alignment, proper attitude, and then the capsule was able to get the go for final approach and then link up. So with the docking complete, Dragon firmly attached, we're into hatch ops. So Tom Marshburn has started the pressurization of the vestibule, that space between the two hatches, And we're going to continue that and then execute a leak check, which can take anywhere from 15 minutes up to an hour, just depending on what kind of readings we start getting back. We're going to be using sensors on the Dragon hatch for tracking pressure, temperature, everything inside that vestibule. Meanwhile, the crew on board Dragon is able to now get out of their suits that they were wearing for that dynamic phase of rendezvous and docking. And then once they're out of there, they can monitor the hatch ops from their side. And then once everything is done with the station crew getting the vestibule pressurized, they'll open up the station side hatch first, and then it'll be over to the AX-1 crew to open the hatch on Dragon. And then after we get the hatches open, the Expedition 67 crew will be able to welcome them on board, and we will have a welcome ceremony sometime after hatch open. Could take as long as 30 minutes, as there are a couple of steps they have to take just after we get the hatches open, just to get Dragon configured for docked operations, including taking some steps just to start integrating Dragon's cabin atmosphere with that on board the space station. And then we'll get the entire Expedition 67 crew, all 7 of them, along with the recently arrived AX-1 astronauts all together, and have a special ceremony to welcome the first private astronaut mission to the space station. We docked about 45 minutes behind schedule per the original timeline, so we are expecting pretty much everything else to shift with that. But we'll continue to give you updates as we get through hatch operations and get ready to bring the crew on board.